From my mother, I inherited a lot around not just numbers. She really pushed me to kind of think out of the box and do things that make you uncomfortable. That just became kind of mental conditioning to kind of just push yourself. And when you push yourself and when you put yourself in more uncomfortable situations, magic happens.
You were at IIT Delhi. What's one experience that kind of shaped you?
At IIT, right, when you put into an environment where like everyone else is not just smarter than you, it also enables you to have curiosity to keep learning. I think that's a humbling experience. And one of the big reasons to kind of wanting to be an operator at that time and not being an investor, I felt that the help and the advice and the feedback that I was giving founders was not as deep as it would be if I would build things myself.
You took a bet on a niche way before ChatGPT, way before Transformer. Was that one reason that gave you full conviction?
The reason I was attracted to AI infra and problems in machine learning is because of the challenges that I saw at Quid.
You were named among the top 20 Indian origin VCs in the Valley.
I think for me, it's also like if I were to join a team and not be in this current role, which founder would I work for? Which founder would I want to lead sales for at the early stages? And that's my mental model. Building products has become easier. Since writing code has become easier and cobbling together things has become easier, distribution and go-to-market has become harder because everyone is building products now. And the question is like, how do you like break through the clutter? How do you break through the noise? In terms of the talent, density has really grown in India. I think historically, people used to think about India from an outsourcing point of view. I don't think that's the case anymore. I think there are core teams that are built out of India where I feel like there are strategic decisions that companies are making at the right time.
From switching 5 schools in Chandigarh to becoming one of the top Indian origin VCs in Silicon Valley, today's guest has lived the ultimate founder, operator, investor journey. Apoorva Pandhi went from IIT Delhi to Wharton, built a machine learning startup before it was cool, became an operator at the forefront of unstructured data at Quid, and now leads early stage AI investments at Zetta Ventures. In this conversation, we dive into why embracing discomfort leads to magic, how curiosity plus serendipity shapes career, and what it really takes to back founders in the age of AI. Let's dive into it.
Apoorv, so excited to have you on the pod.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
Apoorv, I would say a diverse journey you've had. IIT, Wharton, started a company, became an operator, got into venture capital, Lightspeed, and then Foundation Capital, and now at Zetta Ventures. Maybe let's rewind a bit, Apoorv. Let's start from the beginning. We're really a byproduct of our environment. What really shaped you the most while growing up in India?
So I grew up in a city called Chandigarh, which you're aware of. It's a few miles north of Delhi, and grew up in a very close-knit nuclear family. My father, he was a numbers person by training. So he was a CPA or a CA, whatever you might want to call it. And he was leading, he was the general manager at the Tribune newspaper, which is a newspaper based out of India. So he was at the intersection of business and media. That's what his focus was. And I'm talking about my parents because parents shape a lot about what you are. From my mother, I inherited a lot around not just numbers, because she was a math teacher. She's a mathematician and used to teach math to 11th, 12th grade and still does. So from her, like I inherited a lot of like love for numbers, as well as like just challenging yourself every day. She never let me be comfortable in my skin. Like she really pushed me to kind of think out of the box and do things that make you uncomfortable. And kind of that just became kind of mental conditioning to kind of just push yourself and go above and beyond. And when you push yourself and when you put yourself in more uncomfortable situations, magic happens. And you kind of also surprise yourself as well. So I think that was one piece of it. The other piece was that I felt that I had a left brain, right brain kind of upbringing. When I say that, on one hand, because of my mom, I had a love for math and numbers. On the other hand, I was really into sketching and creativity. So I used to love sketching. I still like to sketch a lot. And I think that is a great kind of mix where you kind of think about things from both dimensions. Outside of that, I've switched 5 schools staying in Chandigarh itself, which is not a normal thing to do. A lot of people ask me, "Are you from a military family?" Because that's what happens when you're in the father's in the army. You end up like moving to a lot of different cities and a lot of different schools. I did that within Chandigarh itself, and for different reasons. One was academia, another reason was moving from a boys only school to a coeducational school, and then moved for another reason after that. And I think that entire thing gave me a sense of adaptability, because you're switching your friend circle so quickly. You're switching environments, you're switching a lot of context, but you're still trying to retain your identity. And I think that just helps you just be comfortable with different people, and also helps you make friends very easily. So I would say like a combination of all of that really shaped who I am. And I want to add, since tennis is your sport as well. I played tennis while growing up in Chandigarh, and I think there's a lot of rigor involved in like the training of tennis. And it comes from my family lineage, because my father and my grandfather are tennis players. And that involves a lot of training. It requires a lot of discipline, and it requires a lot of perseverance. And I think with that, combined with kind of the other experiences that I had, um, that's what kind of attracted me to kind of uh, spend more time at the early stages. Because when you think of early stage investing, it's a lot of perseverance, it's a lot of like ambiguity, it's a lot of adaptation to different scenarios. And that's why I like the thrill of 0 to 1, the early stage. And on the other hand, I do like the depth and kind of the geekiness around the infrastructure plays that I'm focusing on, whether it's data infrastructure, AI infrastructure, or technical tools. That comes from this mindset of being numbers driven, statistics driven, and really being deep in academia, from which kind of led me to IIT Delhi as well. So hopefully that addressed that question.
Yeah. Apoorv, in fact, growing up in Chandigarh, I switched schools multiple times, but my reason was only one reason, which was my grades were not keeping up, and because of tennis, I was spending too much time focusing on tennis. And Apoorv, you were at IIT Delhi, one of the toughest, college to get into. Uh, if you were to reflect back, what's one lesson or an experience that kind of shaped you as a person?
I think at IIT, right, when you go from your small city and small town to where you think that you're good in whatever you're doing, you're good in sports, you're good in academia, and you feel good about yourself. When you're put into an environment where like everyone else is not just as good or maybe better than you in academia, and a lot of them are much better. It's not just as good, but they're not just doing academia. They're doing 100 other things, and they're excelling at those things, and they're excelling at like the arts. They're excelling at music, at dance, at quizzing competitions, at debating. That just opens up your eyes, and it just initially you feel, oh my god, where have I come? It's hard to kind of, it's an unsettling feeling. And I think when I spoke about this trait, right, where I was forced to be in challenging situations, that's how I was brought up. I think that is a very challenging situation at a different level, just because like you're surrounded by so many people who are so good at so many traits, and smarter than you, that I think that's a humbling experience. It also enables you to have curiosity to keep learning, because in every conversation, in every interaction, you can learn a lot. And you can learn by observing, because a lot of people who are doing things that you wished you could do, or like you would want to learn. And so I felt that it was a well-rounded experience of like not just being humbled by everyone's presence, but also like and a kind of this feeling of like I need to be curious in life, to keep learning, to keep becoming better. And I think that's translated to today as well. I feel like I learn the most if I'm surrounded by people who are better than me. and I think I perform better if people know more than me. And whether it's the construct of a fund where I'm surrounding myself with colleagues who know more than me, or companies that I'm investing in, where I believe founders should be attracting talent that are better than them in every sphere. That's how like they will grow. That's how the company will succeed. And if you're attracting the best people, that's what attracts even better people going forward. And so that's the key learning lesson that I got from IIT, that don't be shy from people who are better than you. Don't find your safe space, but embrace that, and always find those clusters of people whom you can learn from.
And Apoorv, you ended up moving to US, went to Wharton. Was US always the plan? What drove the decision?
US was never the plan while growing up. I loved where I grew up. I loved being in Delhi. I feel US became part of the plan when I was at Lightspeed. So I was one of the early founding members of Lightspeed India. By founding, I mean that Bejul was the person who set up Lightspeed in India, and he brought on board Anshu and me at that time. So there were three people who were the early Lightspeed India team. And this is back in 2008, 2009 timeframe. And at that time, the tech ecosystem in India was so early. It was like Flipkart and most of these companies like Oyo didn't exist, but Flipkart and Myntra and all of these companies were super early. They were raising their first round of financing. I would say Zomato was a company that existed and was founded by my seniors from IIT Delhi. But people weren't actively thinking about tech as an ecosystem at that time. The jobs out of IIT were still traditional jobs, banking, consulting, core like industry jobs. So when I was at Lightspeed, it was an interesting vantage point, because at that time Lightspeed was investing globally from the US fund. So there was one US fund that was investing out of all their global offices. So sitting out of India, I was able to look at what's happening in Israel, in China, in the US, and also in India, which gave me a unique point of view on like how are different markets doing. And based on the context of the Indian market, the kind of companies that were coming up were more consumer companies, were more offline businesses, were more services businesses. Versus if you were to compare and contrast that to the US market, the market was much more developed. Same with China. China was way ahead in terms of where the market was compared to India, obviously behind US at that point and slowly catching up now. But the US market was very deep in enterprise. And when I was looking at the kind of enterprise businesses that were being built over there, it really fascinated me, because the geek in me, the engineer in me, was really fascinated by the kind of technology that was being built. The second thing that really fascinated me was product-centric thinking, where like in services businesses and consumer businesses, you think through product, but very different than when you think about like enterprise products. That's a very different way of building products and companies. And third piece that really fascinated me was how do you take these things to market? Because consumer companies go to market in a different way, and enterprise businesses have a clear plan around that, where you kind of talk to customers and then figure out their needs and then like figure out how the product needs to be the hands of the end users. And I think that motion and that category really attracted me a lot. And so I felt sitting at Lightspeed that if I want to be either a builder or an operator or a VC, I need to be in the US market. Because the way people think about building products over here, it's a different discipline compared to what was happening in India. And that's what helped me change my mind. And I felt like I should come to the US. At that point, I could either come to US while at Lightspeed, because Lightspeed was global, or I could do something else. I decided to kind of be an operator. And I felt the best way to transition to being an operator in a different country was to go to school. So that's how I applied to business school at that point, and got into Wharton. And one of the big reasons to kind of wanting to be an operator at that time and not being an investor is while I enjoyed the investing time at Lightspeed a lot, I felt that the help and the advice and the feedback that I was giving founders was not as deep as it would be if I would build things myself. And if I were to go back to venture, I would go back with deeper networks. I would go back with skill sets that I could give back to the ecosystem. Uh, and trust me, there are career investors who are exceptional investors. And it was just my decision because I felt more comfortable being an investor after being an operator for a few years. And that's what drove me to go to US, go to school first, and then subsequently become an operator.
Mhm. And you started your first startup in machine learning, and at the time, it was not, a sexy industry to be in. It was too early. What was the founding story? What exactly were you solving, and what did you learn from it?
Yeah, first startups are generally accidental. I wish they were more intentional, and I wish you did more work. And I think some people do, and I wish I did more work to figure out the feasibility of the product and the market. But when I went to school, and this happened while I was at Wharton with my classmate and a friend from CS. We got together, and startups happen in two different ways, right? Either you have a pain point, like a burning need in your personal life or around you that you validate and then we build for, or it happens when you kind of have a set of friends who really want to do something together. And we were like three friends, and we were like, we want to build something together. So let's figure out like what we want to build for. And I think when you kind of go down that path, you have to be very intentional about like what problems to solve. So I would say more than a startup, that was a project. And if I would start something now again, I would be more intentional about it. But what we tried to solve at that point was, as a student and as a working professional, we all drown in communication, and that communication is not just like work related communication, but also personal life. We have so many channels that we're dealing with, whether it's Slack, whether it's email, or it's social media. And the idea that we had was, let's start with email and just let's make the consumption experience for the end user more productive. And in order to kind of really make sense out of email, which was unstructured data, was super hard at that time. And the idea of like clustering, the idea of like categorizing things that are top of mind for that user persona required more brute force compared to now, where LLMs have made those things much simpler. And if LLMs existed at that time, I don't think that building that product would have been hard. Distributing that product would have been a harder thing, which is kind of the problem right now, that building products has become easier. Distribution is kind of the core question that people are grappling with. But we built that product. We built it for consumers. We built it for students and working professionals. And we built it mostly for Apple Mail, because if you look at iPhone Mail at that time, productivity features were lacking, and they've built productivity features over time, but at that time they were like really lacking. And we wanted to start off by building the basic functionalities that Gmail provides, and then on top of that, provide more productivity features. And eventually, the vision was to kind of combine all channels of communication into one interface, so that you as an individual, like Shiva as an individual, is like knows exactly like what is the most important thing or important people to kind of talk to that day, and you don't like miss out on anything important, and you don't drown in a lot of communication. So got to like a couple of users for that on the consumer side, raise some basic capital for that, and then soon Google came out with the inbox product, which is very similar to what our idea was. And obviously, with that Google scale, they can do this at a much better way than what we could do as early startup founders. And then decided to like try out the B2B route, where if you were to take this interface to enterprises like or companies, how would that work? And so tried that sales motion with a couple of different teams that we were selling to in different companies. and realized very quickly that the product experience was not great. It was a product that was cobbled together by three people who didn't understand design or product. And that was a great learning experience. I think that was the story where you learn the harder way that building things requires intention around pain point. It requires a lot of deep thought around go to market. And go to market is not just selling and distribution, it kind of plugs into how your product is built from ground up. And the first product experience needs to be a low friction onboarding, and it needs to be a simple value prop that should shine through. Don't crowd your product with too many things early on, otherwise the user gets confused. So I think those are a couple of different learnings that we had from the company. But overall, I would say I would love that experience just because of what it taught all of us.
Yeah. And later, Quid happened for you. How did that play out? Why did you end up joining Quid, and what were the learnings there?
Yeah, I think so. Quid really attracted me because when we were facing this challenge of categorization with an email, this is a lot of unstructured data that you were trying to figure out how to categorize in ways that could be consumed better. It was an NLP problem, right? And as students, we were not as equipped to understand NLP, and this was also like the pre-transformer days. And it was hard to kind of really understand what is the right kind of technology to use over here. And we looked outside, and we saw very few companies focused on unstructured data. In fact, like ML as a field was a small field, where even if you look at companies that were focused on structured data and making sense of that, was a narrow market. Within that, unstructured was an even narrower market. So you found very few companies focused on that. So at that point, when I looked at Quid, I was like, they were doing pretty cool stuff on unsupervised learning and RL. But there were very few companies like IBM Watson or Palantir that were also in the same field broadly, focused on different use cases and different kinds of markets. But that's what attracted me, that I felt that this problem was hard to solve. I felt Quid had built a product and technology that was interesting. What they wanted me to join for was to help figure out use cases of that product for the market. So the big question in our mind, in front of us, was: should we take this product, create kind of a front end to it, and just put this in the hands of different customers in different verticals or different functions, or should we create solutions around it where today the idea of forward deployed engineering has come to the forefront. Palantir has been doing it for a long time. We at Quid were doing it for a long time too, because at that point, since the technology was not there, but people are fascinated by the idea of unstructured, unsupervised learning, we were pairing that alongside forward deployed solutions engineers and consultants, and going to different markets and trying to figure out what use cases to solve using that approach. And the unstructured data could be anything, right? It could be your internal unstructured data, because every company has so many documents, or it could be external unstructured data. And we got all of that data through our partnerships with a lot of data companies, like Nielsen's of the world, where you could get access to a lot of public data. Now, all these LLMs are taking all of this public data and training them, pre-training it, and giving you access to a chat GPT. At that time, there was no chat GPT. And so on one hand, we were giving access to public data that for your use case, if you're doing market research, and if you're doing a market research on a certain topic, search for that. And you couldn't do it in natural language. So you had to write a query in a certain way to be able to make sense out of it. Or ingest all your internal data. And to ingest your internal data, we needed the help from forward deployed engineers to kind of take all different formats of data and different modalities of data, ingest that into the platform. And when you see these clusters, like what you see in case of vector databases and embeddings, that's the kind of clusters you would see in Quid's product. And then the idea was how do you kind of extract and abstract value from that for different use cases? So we opened up financial services. We opened up healthcare and pharma. So it was a fascinating experience, but I just felt it was early for its time.
Curious, Apoorva, look, you took a bet on a niche, which was, look, machine learning, NLP, way before ChatGPT, way before Transformer. It was not obvious. And of course, it comes with a lot of risk when you're saying that, hey, I want to build a career in this specific domain. What was that one reason that gave you full conviction? Okay, this is the exactly thing I want to be in.
I wouldn't say that I had the foresight. I think that wouldn't be right. I feel that a lot of things happen based on what you like and what you gravitate towards. And a lot of things are, I do attribute it to serendipity as well. Like if I didn't face this problem of unstructured data in my own startup, I wouldn't have been attracted to a company like Quid. If I wouldn't have worked at Quid and seen the problems at close quarters, I wouldn't have like pursued that field going forward, because I felt that even going forward, when I came back to investing a few years later at Foundation and now at Zetta, the reason I was attracted to AI infra and problems in machine learning is because of the challenges that I saw at Quid back in the day. So one part of it is serendipity. The other part of it is interest, because I felt that there was an interest in this area of unsupervised, unstructured learning, just because, or unstructured data, I should say, just because there is a lot of structured data in the world, but the amount of unstructured data in this world is, I would say, orders of magnitude more. And so in my mind, since I was always a curious being, I always like love the idea of like going to Wikipedia for like any question that I had. But if you look at Wikipedia's format, the thing that attracts you to Wikipedia is the fact that everything is cited. It's linked to things that where it comes from. It's still hard to like search for things on Wikipedia, but at least you know that things that you're looking at are verified in some way or form, and it may or may not be the right verifications, but it's verified. So I always wondered, like, if I'm curious about things, there should be a better way to get to an answer. There should be a better way to search, and Google doesn't do the job. So how do you solve that problem? And I think we tried to solve that problem at Quid using unsupervised learning. Obviously, that was hard, and it was not the right approach as well. Now with self-supervision and GPTs, it's become so much easier. But it's a combination of like what your curiosity and interest leads you to, and serendipity. And if the serendipity did not exist, then who knows what I would be doing today. So I can attribute it completely to, oh, I had this foresight and I knew exactly what I wanted to do.
Yeah. You pursued your curiosity and combined with serendipity. Look, you went back to investing. That was sort of planned from the beginning, and not just went back to investing. I was I was doing my research. You were named among the top 20 Indian origin VCs in the Valley. With the likes of Vinod Khosla, Manu from K9, I think the fund, and partners or managing partners at Insight and others. How did foundation capital happen for you? What were the hard lessons that you learned about investing at foundation capital?
Yeah. Firstly, I don't know how those lists happen, because those people are much more accomplished than I am. But I'm glad someone picked up my name for whatever reason. But when I was at Quid, that's what got me into angel investing. So the fact that there were so many problems in and around the vicinity of unstructured data and data itself. I started to look at a lot of founders and companies that were starting in that vicinity. Started to advise them and angel invest in them. In fact, at that point, so one of my closest friends in venture is Ravi Raj Jain from Lightspeed. And the funny story is that when he was getting into venture, we talked about it, and he feels that I'm instrumental for him to be in venture. From when he moved from operating to venture, I feel when I was going back to venture, he was instrumental because he started to see the kind of things that I was doing, both as an operator, because I was leading go-to-market teams, and I really enjoyed selling to prospective customers, and that was one skill that he felt and I felt was needed in venture. And the other piece was that I was actively angel investing at that time. And I started to like discuss with him, and while it was not on my cards, he said you should meet partners at few funds. You'll enjoy talking to them. And through that, I think he made an introduction to someone at. I'm not sure if he made an intro to Foundation, but he definitely made a bunch of intros at that time, and that's how I got introduced to Foundation Capital. And my first conversation was with Steve Vassallo over there. And then I met Ashu and a bunch of other investors over there. Really liked the fact that it was not one of the mega funds at that time, because there were a lot of like big 500 million plus funds. It was still smaller than that. So it was a small, like close knit team. And it was easy to kind of think through things together. Otherwise, when funds become too big, it's just hard to kind of work as a cohesive team. And then there was a lot of value to be created within the fund in terms of themes that had to be explored. I really gravitated a lot towards things that were deeply technical. So data infrastructure, AI infrastructure. Now I've started to think about horizontal applications as well. But that's what kind of attracted me to go back to venture, because when I think about my operating role, it was kind of doing a go-to-market role for one product, one market, one amazing founder. But if I think of venture, you're doing that similar role at the early stages, which I enjoy doing, but for many markets, many amazing founders. And I think that's also become one of the ways I think about investing now. It's not just about like investing a check. You obviously, as Ashmeet Sadana says, engineering capital. You're always like trying to invest something to kind of get a return out of it. But it's not just about that. I think for me, it's also like if I were to join a team and not be in this current role, which founder would I work for? And that's my mental model. So which founder would I want to lead sales for at the earliest stages? And so it has to be really convincing for me that this is the right team to back. That's what my mental model is now. When I think about investing overall. But that's the journey that took me to Foundation, and I was there for approximately 3.5 years before I moved to Zetta.
Got it. And seems like Apoorv, you get the thrill of being early and also at funds who are smaller in nature, and what kind of like drove your decision to join Zetta?
Yeah, so I think with Zetta, it was intentional from the point of view of I wanted to really focus on machine learning, data infrastructure, and things that are all AI first. And I joined Zetta back in 22. At that time, this was pre-ChatGPT, where the big question that was running in my mind was, it's a narrow market for machine learning. Hopefully, it'll become bigger going forward. But like that, but that's what I enjoy doing. If it's a narrow market, we'll find the best companies in that narrow market. And because if you think of the market of ML at that time, the buyers of ML were two kinds of buyers. One was data scientists and ML platform teams that were buying infrastructure, or they were people who were buying computer vision machine translation applications. But that was a very intentional buy, that we are buying an application that is AI powered. Most of the other users and buyers didn't want to hear anything about ML, especially if it was an application company. Their core need for an application was if it's solving my problem, which is the right mental model, but no one wanted to think about machine learning at that point. Versus now, there are top-down AI mandates where people are buying AI across the board. But at that time, it was very different. So if you're investing in AI ML at that point, you're mostly investing either in infrastructure or you're investing in things that are in autonomy, in case of self-driving cars or robotics and so on, or you're investing in computer vision applications. So that was the worldview at that point, which has completely shifted now. So one was the focus. The second one was stage, where I really wanted to be the first check, go as early as possible, do pre-seeds, seeds. So the intersection of seed and this focus area was unique to Zetta at that time. It was also unique to a few other funds. I spoke to a few of them. I also evaluated if I wanted to start my own fund at that time, but realized that there were two things that was really clear to me. One is I wanted to be surrounded by people that I can learn from, and starting my own fund kind of reduces the odds of that, just because you're not surrounded by too many people internally. And with Zetta's team, I felt that I can learn a lot from everyone around me. The second piece was I was very keen to lead rounds. And if you start a new fund, in many cases, you start with a smaller fund, and it doesn't allow you to lead rounds. So with that construct in mind, I felt Zetta was the best option at that point.
Look, AI is a broad term. And I might be wrong. I think you have decided to stay more focused towards AI infrastructure versus LLMs or wrappers around it. Give a sense in that, Apoorv, and also assume that the audience is not that savvy in terms of the industry. They probably don't understand it at the deeper level. Give us a sense why you've picked up this particular, thing within AI, and also at the same time, the follow-on question is: you've been in AI since more than a decade back, and you've seen the journey. You've seen the journey from when AI was not a thing and people didn't know what machine learning exactly is, and now you just mentioned that there's a mandate from company that we need to invest in AI. And now you've seen the hype of AI as well. What's some, an advice to founders that they should be aware of when thinking about building a company in AI?
Yeah. So let me answer your first question first. Firstly, historically, I've done a lot of data infrastructure and AI infrastructure. I continue to do that. But if I had to look at the entire stack of AI, right? If you start from the bottom, you think of compute providers like the likes of CoreWeave, NVIDIA, and so on. On top of that, think of like data infrastructure and cloud infrastructure. And data infrastructure has resulted in companies like Databricks and Snowflake. And downstream of that are the LLM providers themselves, which is OpenAI, Anthropic, Mistral, and so on. Then you have the AI tooling and platform companies. The other tools that AI engineers or developers are using to put some of these models into production. And then you have applications downstream. And I feel like there could be some applications that are wrappers, but if you think of like applications moving from copilots to agents, a lot of them are not wrappers because they require a lot of thinking around infrastructure, around systems, around reliability. And there are some applications that are being built downstream of the foundation models itself. Like, so you don't have to recreate the model, but you have to really focus on a certain function or a certain vertical. So there could be vertical applications or functional applications that are more horizontal, or they could be full stack applications. The applications that are actually building their own models, because for those specific use cases, that data just simply doesn't just exist outside. And examples of that are areas in biochemistry and drug development, or material sciences or robotics, where you have to be able to collect the data yourself, and honestly gives you some kind of data advantage as well. But you're not just limited to the model. but you're also kind of building the full stack application. So if I now zoom out and think about the areas that are exciting for the fund overall, most of the capital in the market right now has gone towards either compute providers or foundation model companies. So I think most most of the capital right now is concentrated around the top 10 companies that are in these areas. But as an early stage fund, we're looking for investments that are asset light, that are capital efficient, and that'll lead to like meaningful returns, but also in areas that kind of are relevant for the market. So for that reason, we've chosen few areas within the stack. One is data infrastructure, where we feel that you could build a sustainable company in that space that in many cases could be acquired by Databricks or Snowflake, but our investment thesis is to back companies that are sustainable, that could be standalone, and could kind of create a next Databricks or Snowflake. So one is in data infrastructure. Then we're not looking at foundation models or compute, but we are definitely looking at AI tools and platforms. So these are not the ML tools that data scientists used to use for classical ML, but these are the tools that AI engineers are using, everything from orchestration to figuring out evals to figuring out reliability, that the AI engineers are using to put these models into production. We're looking at that space, and we're looking at applications as well. And everyone in the fund have their majors and minors. In terms of my major and focus area, I look at data infrastructure, AI infrastructure, but I also look at horizontal applications, just because I feel like a lot of horizontal application companies are being built by people who have been infra practitioners and founders before, and believe that they have the skill needed to figure out the systems thinking and the reliability of these agents going forward. So those are kind of the key pockets that we are playing in, and that's a bird's eye view. Can dig in and tell you about like the key opportunities over there that are exciting. But what was the second question?
Second, founders should be aware of when they are building, in AI. Given currently it feels like it's a AI hype or boom market we are in.
Yeah. I think there are few things that are core to building, whether you're AI or not. Anyways, I think if you're building a company, whether it's AI or not, you have to build for a pain point that you feel is a pain point that's real, and you have to validate that. You have to speak to enough people for at least a month or two, where you have the confidence and conviction yourself that I want to be building in this space. Then comes, and in parallel, you're obviously thinking about your team as well, because the question is, are you building it solo? Are you building it with someone else? And it's totally fine to build it solo if that's an intentional thing that you're doing. But step back and think about like, what kind of skill sets do you need to build this product or build a solution for this pain point, and whether you have all of those or whether you need that in other people as well. But again, like building a company is as a solo founder is a lonely journey, and so it's important to know that there'll be lows and highs, and for the lows you do need you might need or you might benefit from someone who's a co-founder on the team. So those are kind of the basics that you still have to do. But I think what's really become even more important, I think I alluded to this before as well, building products has become easier. Cobbling together, writing code has become easier. It is still hard to think about usability. It is still hard to think about the entire product experience. So I think that one piece is still core. Writing code has definitely become easier. But since writing code has become easier and cobbling together things has become easier, distribution and go-to-market has become harder, because everyone is building products now. And the question is like, how do you like break through the clutter? How do you break through the noise? So if you're building in this space, if you're building for the pain point that you've thought about, think about creative ways even before you start building the product. How should this product be in the hands of the user? Would it be a top-down sale? Would it be a sale where you would not have to like sell it actively, but people will find it and start using it? And if that's the case, because that DNA has to go back into product building. In the absence of that, that can't be an afterthought. Like you can't build something which you then decide, oh, now I have to figure out the go to market for this. So that's one piece. The other piece is there's a lot of reinventing the wheel happening while building products, and there's a lot of tooling around. And for someone who's starting to build in the space, I would step back and think about like all my needs and think about what I need to like use that is existing versus what I do need to build from ground up. What is my core that I need to own myself versus what can I leverage outside, because there's a lot available outside. Um, and then I would say that the pace of innovation is so quick right now that everyone is learning at the same time, whether it's researchers, whether it's academics, whether it's operators or investors. So I can't stress this enough, but like if you are building whatever product you're building, don't just think of uh, using tooling or playing with tooling for that purpose. Like keep doing hobby projects on the side, because the amount that you will learn from that is going to be exponential in terms of kind of the new tools out there, the new models out there, which you could apply to your core product. Because if you're not in the thick of what's happening in the market, the progress that's happening in the market, then you might just lag behind if you're just so focused on building your product. So those hobby projects on the side just keep you in the thick of things in terms of what's new in the market and what's changing and what can I adopt. One last thing I would say is like don't build something which will improve as the model improves. Because if you're not building a net new model, and if you're not owning a net new model, and if you're building a product that will benefit from the model, then build something that will improve as the model improves. And secondly, there is a lot to be done with collecting end user data. So if you are in the if you're closer to the end user, and if you have the ability to collect any trajectories that you believe can benefit you in the longer term, either personalizing experiences or really building like more stable and highly efficient agents, then be proactive about that data strategy as well. So those are some of the things that I think about.
Got it. So talking about GTM, finding the right design partners, uh, content marketing. I heard there's a cool program called GTM for Dev. Founders can look into that, which is founded by Apoorva. And look, Apoorv, you started your career in venture in India. You've seen Indian tech ecosystem right from the beginning. Given your vantage point from Silicon Valley, you've seen how Silicon Valley has matured and evolved. What's your take on Indian tech ecosystem, and what are you most excited about for Indian tech ecosystem moving forward?
Firstly, the Indian tech ecosystem is always close to my heart because that's where my tech journey started. That's where my investing journey also started. I feel that in terms of the talent, that the density has really grown in India. It's not just, obviously we call Bangalore that hub, but I feel like there are like hubs in Pune, in Delhi, in Mumbai, and in different parts of India. I think historically people used to think about India from an arbitrage point of view, from an outsourcing point of view. I don't think that's the case anymore. I think there are core teams that are built out of India where there's a lot of back-end talent in India, and now there's a lot of front-end talent as well that is being built up over there. So I feel like there are strategic decisions that companies are making at the right time. Obviously, not everyone is trying to do that at the seed stage. And some people do based on like their networks back there. But there is a clear strategic reason for why people are setting up broader teams in India. But then the other reason for kind of tapping into that network or the Indian ecosystem is also because of certain skills which we see being distributed around the world. So if you think of applied ML as a skill, that has there is a lot of applied ML talent in Bangalore. Similarly, like there is a lot of like NLP talent in France or in Canada. We feel that is kind of definitely a hub for applied ML talent. So tapping into that talent becomes an important thing for a lot of startups based out of here. So I think that's one aspect of it. The other aspect is that a lot more founders are coming out of India. It's also been interesting to see a lot of global funds that had set up shop in India were focused mostly on India, and then they expanded to the Asia markets. Have now started to build these venture highways between India and the US. We've seen so many of the Indian partners move here because then an interesting phenomenon that I've seen is earlier, a lot of startups used to come to raise growth rounds from US funds. Now they're coming here even for their seeds and Series A's, just because while they're building out of India, they recognize that there is importance to being in person in this market, especially if they're seeing demand from this market. And whether it's like having a co-founder who's your commercial co-founder based here, or if you're raising like part of that round from an Indian fund and the other part of the round from a US fund is top of mind for them. And it's not just like raising it pre-product or pre-revenue. A lot of them are getting revenue very quickly and have learned to sell to the US market very quickly, which is what I've been very fascinated about. And I think a lot of them are learning from the likes of Freshdesk and Browser Stack and Hasura and a bunch of other companies that have come out of India and have shown that playbook. So that's very promising. I feel that it's still been a question whether the market within India is big for enterprise or not. And that's why a lot of investor friends that I have over there are not like they understand a lot of domains, but they're not spending time in any one of these domains only. Like, for example, over here, when you come to the US, you're like, oh, I'm a data infrastructure investor or I'm a cybersecurity investor. I think it's hard to do that in India just because the markets for enterprise are not as deep as the US. And I think that is one thing which is not a function of capital because there's enough capital that is going to India. I think it is a function of like buying behavior because there are now enough companies that are not just like incumbents and existing buyers, but also like the newer tech companies that have grown up and could potentially buy from some of these startups. And these are all enterprise plays that they could actually buy these products. And I think that needs to be encouraged more. And it's also a function of regulation as well. If the regulation in India supports a lot of these startups, like what happened to Paytm after the RBI regulation, I think it kind of disrupts the ecosystem when those things happen. So I feel like while there is a lot of talent and that talent is growing, and I'm very excited about that talent, and I'm also very excited to even back that talent, because for us as a fund, doesn't matter whether that talent is based in the US or Europe or India, as long as the US market is a part of the story in terms of go-to-market, we are excited about investing in that founder. And given that I've switched 5 schools in Chandigarh, I have a lot of friends over there and a huge network, not just from IIT, but from all colleges that I'm excited to back. So that's what I think. There's a lot of potential, and we think, and it's still early in the journey.
One more before we get into our last section. Let's say IIT invites you to give a commencement speech at IIT Delhi. What's one piece of advice would you give to IIT Delhi students, given how things have changed from when you were IIT to
I think this kind of goes back to this core question that's running in everyone's mind, that how will like what kind of education do you need, like what kind of skills do you need given that AI is taking over everything. And I think one core piece of advice that I give everyone is, especially if you're coming from IIT, then you already have that critical thinking ability. You're already thinking about things in a very nuanced way, and so that is a given. You already have that. I think the thing that needs to be built in a lot of people is adaptability, which is like, and with adaptability comes velocity of learning. Those are the things that I also look for in founders as well. And adaptability is even more important right now because in today's world, whether you're starting a company or whether you're interviewing for a job, one of the core parts of an interview process right now is like, what kind of tools do you know how to use? What kind of AI tools do you know how to use? What kind of tools can actually automate some parts of your workflow? And you need to be pretty open about it, that like, sure, some parts of my workflow will get automated over time, but I will end up doing bigger, better things that'll be impactful for the company and for the economy. So while whatever skills I might have learned today might be taken over by AI tools going forward or AI agents going forward, along the way, because of my curiosity and because of my ability to adapt, I will learn a lot more. And I need to be open to that. And that all goes back to adaptation, and it all goes back to my slope of learning. So learning never stops and adaptability never stops. In fact, in today's world, you need more of both. And that's what I would tell them, that I think just keep learning and never feel that you know enough. And be always open to being uncomfortable and in environments that are unknown, and you'll figure it out because you're smart.
So the last section is driven by my co-pilot in the back. His name is Alfonso, just so you know. And he's asking, we know Apoorv as a founder, as an operator, as an investor. What do his friends know him for? Who is Apoorv outside of work?
Well, outside of work, I'm a social person. I love being around family. I love making new friends, and I'm a I'm a loving dad. I have two daughters, and I love to spend time with them. And yeah, I just love to like step out and and do things. Like, I think if I'm not doing things, then I'm getting bored. So I need to keep doing things. On the weekend, like even if I'm not working or even if nothing else is happening, we'll be out and about. We'll be walking and just trying to explore the neighborhoods. Just like to do things, like to make friends, and love to learn new things. I think, and as I said, learning never stops. So I feel like even with investing, um, you know that you're a good investor over a horizon, over a period of time. But what you definitely know every day is that, and what is in your control is that you can actually learn something new every day. And I think that's what helps me sleep peacefully at night, where I need a eureka moment every day, that, oh, this is something that is unique. This is something that I've learned today. And this is something that I'll apply tomorrow.
Love it. Thank you so much for coming on the pod and sharing your journey so far. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. It was great.